There are wines that taste good, and then there are wines that shaped a nation. Wines whispered in the halls of Versailles, toasted in the trenches of war, and sealed with curses no one dares to break. One bottle vanished into mist, another shattered on a marble floor. One still glows in a dark cellar, untouched for centuries. These 11 wines didn't just survive history, they made it. From emperors and popes to revolutions and heartbreak, today we uncork the bottles that built France's legend, one sip at a time. Picture this: Napoleon Bonaparte, the most powerful man in Europe, raising a glass of Bordeaux wine before a decisive battle. A symbol of strength, tradition, and French excellence, Bordeaux has been the wine of emperors, aristocrats, and connoisseurs for centuries. But how did it earn such prestige? Let's uncover the fascinating story of Bordeaux, the wine of Napoleon's legacy. Our journey begins over 2,000 years ago, when the Romans planted the first vineyards in Bordeaux. They recognized the region's perfect climate, with its warm summers and mild winters, ideal for growing grapes. By the Middle Ages, Bordeaux had become a key player in European trade, supplying England's nobility with its finest red wines. The marriage of Eleanor of Aquitaine to the English King Henry II in 1152 secured Bordeaux's place as the primary wine supplier to the English throne. Fast forward to the 19th century, and Napoleon Bonaparte is reshaping Europe. His love for Bordeaux was well known, and he often gifted its finest bottles to foreign dignitaries as a symbol of French prestige. During his rule, Bordeaux winemakers perfected their craft, focusing on quality and structure. It was during this era that Bordeaux's iconic classification system was born, ranking wines from Premier Cru to Grand. In 1855, at the request of Emperor Napoleon III, Bordeaux wines were officially classified based on their reputation and market value. This system remains in place today, defining the prestige of chateaux like Lafite, Latour, and Margaux. This ranking cemented Bordeaux's dominance in the wine world, making it the gold standard for quality and investment. Despite its historical success, Bordeaux has faced challenges. From the devastating phylloxera epidemic of the late 19th century to economic downturns, the region has had to continuously adapt. But Bordeaux remains resilient. Today, it balances tradition with innovation, producing some of the most sought-after wines in the world. From exclusive wine auctions to collectors around the globe, Bordeaux is more than just a wine. It's a status symbol, a legacy, a piece of French heritage. Whether enjoyed in the halls of power or at a simple dinner table, the legacy of Bordeaux continues to thrive. What's your favorite Bordeaux wine? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible wine stories. Burgundy, France. Mist rolls over the endless vineyards as dawn breaks, revealing twisted vines that have stood for over 1,000 years. But hidden within this landscape is a grape that has challenged kings, monks, and winemakers alike: Pinot Noir. A grape so delicate yet so powerful that it became the wine of emperors and artists, poets and revolutionaries. This is the story of Burgundy's Pinot Noir, a wine that defied time itself. The story of Pinot Noir begins over 1,000 years ago with the monks of Burgundy. In the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church controlled vast vineyards, using them to create wines for religious ceremonies. But the monks were more than winemakers. They were scientists, carefully selecting the best vines, recording their findings, and laying the foundation for what we know today as terroir. They knew that Pinot Noir was fragile. It required the perfect soil, the perfect climate, and the perfect care. And Burgundy, with its limestone-rich land and cool climate, was the only place on earth where this delicate grape could thrive. By the 17th century, Pinot Noir had become the wine of nobility. French kings and European aristocrats sought after Burgundy's finest bottles, believing them to be superior to any other wine in the world. But as the French Revolution swept across the nation, vineyards once owned by the monarchy and the church were seized, divided, and given to the people. For the first time, ordinary citizens could own and cultivate Burgundy's legendary grapes. Yet this led to an unexpected challenge. Small, fragmented vineyards meant that winemaking in Burgundy became an art of survival, with families passing down their knowledge for generations. Throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, Burgundy faced crisis after crisis. The phylloxera epidemic nearly wiped out Pinot Noir. War devastated the vineyards, but each time Burgundy's winemakers fought to preserve their legacy. While Bordeaux embraced modernization and large estates, Burgundy remained fiercely independent, valuing small, family-owned domains over corporate wineries. It wasn't until the 20th century that Burgundy wines began their resurgence, thanks to strict classification systems and a renewed global appreciation for terroir. Today, Pinot Noir is one of the most sought-after wines in the world. From the legendary Romanée Conti, fetching prices of tens of thousands of dollars per bottle, to small, family-owned vineyards producing wines with the same passion as the monks centuries ago. Unlike bold Bordeaux or intense Rhone wines, Pinot Noir whispers instead of shouts. It is delicate, perfumed, and endlessly complex. And while Pinot Noir has found success in California, Oregon, and even New Zealand, Burgundy remains its spiritual home, where the art of winemaking is a centuries-old dance between nature and human hands. As climate change threatens Burgundy's delicate balance, winemakers are adapting, experimenting with new techniques to preserve Pinot Noir's elegance. But one thing is certain, Pinot Noir will continue to captivate those who seek a wine that tells a story, a wine that embodies the soul of its land, a wine that has stood the test of time. Are you a fan of Pinot Noir? What's your favorite bottle? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible wine stories. Imagine a medieval castle perched above a rolling vineyard, its stones echoing with the whispers of history. The year is 1309, and Pope Clement V has just relocated the papal court to Avignon. But amidst the power struggles of medieval Europe, there is one thing that captivates him even more: wine. The Rhone Valley, with its sun-drenched slopes and ancient vines, was about to become the papal court's personal vineyard. This is the story of how the wines of the Rhone Valley rose from a papal secret to worldwide fame. The Rhone Valley's winemaking roots stretch back over 2,000 years to the Roman Empire. Roman soldiers stationed along the Rhone River planted vineyards, realizing that the region's climate was perfect for grape cultivation. Over centuries, these vineyards expanded, producing wines that were rich, bold, and deeply connected to the rugged landscape. But it wasn't until the arrival of the papacy that Rhone wines gained true prestige. In 1309, Pope Clement V moved the papacy from Rome to Avignon, bringing wealth, power, and an insatiable thirst for fine wine. Seeing the potential of the Rhone Valley, he ordered the expansion of vineyards around his new home. His successor, Pope John XXII, took it a step further. He built a grand chateau overlooking the vines, naming it Châteauneuf-du-Pape, meaning the new castle of the Pope. The wines produced here became known as the wine of the popes and were reserved for royalty and the elite. For centuries, Rhone wines remained a well-kept secret of the papacy, enjoyed by kings and clergy alike. While Bordeaux and Burgundy gained global recognition, Rhone wines remained in their shadow. It wasn't until the 19th century that the region saw a resurgence, as wine critics and connoisseurs rediscovered its unique blends. In 1936, Châteauneuf-du-Pape became the first official AOC, Appellation d'Origine Contrôlée, in France, setting the standard for wine quality nationwide. The region's signature grape, Grenache, along with Syrah and Mourvèdre, created powerful, complex wines that stood apart from the rest. By the late 20th century, Rhone wines had exploded onto the global stage, with top vineyards producing some of the most sought-after bottles in the world. What makes Rhone wines so unique? It all comes down to terroir. The valley is divided into two distinct regions: the northern Rhone, where Syrah reigns supreme, producing bold, peppery wines, and the southern Rhone, where Grenache thrives, creating rich, fruit-forward blends. The famous galets roulés, or rolled pebbles, found in Châteauneuf-du-Pape vineyards, retain heat during the day and release it at night, helping grapes ripen to perfection. This perfect combination of soil, sun, and tradition has allowed Rhone wines to compete with the greatest vintages of France. Today, the Rhone Valley is a powerhouse of French winemaking, inspiring regions across the world from California to Australia. With rising temperatures and evolving winemaking techniques, Rhone producers are adapting to preserve their wine's balance and structure. Whether it's a rich, peppery Syrah from Côte Rôtie or a bold, sun-drenched Châteauneuf-du-Pape, The wines of the Rhone Valley continue to captivate drinkers worldwide. What's your favorite Rhone wine? Have you ever tried a Châteauneuf-du-Pape? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more legendary wine stories. Imagine a mighty fortress rising above endless vineyards. The year is 1317, and a new pope sits in Avignon. But amidst power struggles and religious turmoil, one thing unites the papal court: wine. And not just any wine, but one that would shape history. For centuries, the Rhone Valley had been producing wine, but its reputation remained in the shadows of Bordeaux and Burgundy. That changed in 1309 when Pope Clement V moved the papal court from Rome to Avignon. The popes, powerful and wealthy, needed the finest wine to match their status, and the Rhone Valley, with its rocky soils and sun-drenched vineyards, was the perfect answer. His successor, Pope John XXII, took things even further. He ordered the construction of a grand castle atop the vineyards, Châteauneuf-du-Pape, or the Pope's new castle. The wine that flowed from these lands became legendary, reserved only for popes, cardinals, and the nobility. For centuries, Châteauneuf-du-Pape remained a hidden gem of the papal court. But as history moved forward, its reputation began to spread beyond the Rhone. By the 18th and 19th centuries, the wines of Châteauneuf-du-Pape were competing with France's finest. Then in 1936, history was made once again. Châteauneuf-du-Pape became France's first official AOC Appellation d'Origine Contrôlée, setting the standard for wine laws across the country. Even today, its strict regulations ensure that every bottle carries the same prestige as in the days of the popes. The secret lies in its terroir, a mix of sun, wind, and the famous galets roulés, large round stones that trap heat during the day and release it at night, helping the grapes ripen to perfection. Combined with 13 permitted grape varieties, this results in wines that are bold, rich, and built to last for decades. Today, Châteauneuf-du-Pape is one of the most sought-after wines in the world. From medieval popes to modern collectors, its legacy remains unshaken. Have you ever tasted a Châteauneuf-du-Pape? What's your favorite vintage? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more legendary wine stories. Imagine a wine so fresh that it's bottled just weeks after harvest, sparking celebrations worldwide. A wine that prompts races, midnight parties, and global anticipation. This isn't just any wine, it's Beaujolais Nouveau. In the heart of France, nestled between Burgundy and the Rhone, lies the Beaujolais region, renowned for its Gamay grapes. Traditionally, winemakers would ferment these grapes quickly after harvest to create a light, fresh wine. This early bottling, known as vin de primeur, was a way to celebrate the end of the grape picking season. The wine wasn't intended for aging. It was enjoyed locally by workers in villages in the area, offering a first taste of the year's harvest. The history of Beaujolais Nouveau took a significant turn on March 11, 1951, with the evolution of regulations on the sale of that year's wines. A decree published in the official journal specified that producers were only authorized to bring out of their cellars the wines of the 1951 harvest, benefiting from the designation of origin controlled only from December 15, 1951. This regulation inadvertently set the stage for the rapid production and release of Beaujolais Nouveau, as winemakers sought to bring their young wines to market sooner. In the 1950s, a few winemakers decided to make Beaujolais Nouveau's release a grand spectacle. They started a race, a competition to see who could deliver the first bottle to Paris. The idea caught on, and soon the tradition spread worldwide. By the 1980s, Beaujolais Nouveau was racing to London, New York, and even Tokyo, with wine lovers eagerly awaiting its arrival. Under French law, Beaujolais Nouveau is released on the third Thursday of every November at 12:01 a.m., just weeks after September's vintage, when grapes are harvested. At that stroke of just after midnight, winophiles all over France begin their jubilant celebration in honor of the uncorking of the Beaujolais Nouveau. Well over 100 events throughout France are held with fireworks, music, and of course, tastings, as tout le monde vie to sample the new batch of Beaujolais. Beaujolais Nouveau is known for its earthy qualities, bright berry fruit flavors, and light, fresh style. It's a wine meant to be enjoyed young, within a few months of release. Today, millions of bottles of Beaujolais Nouveau are shipped worldwide, arriving at exactly 12:01 a.m. on its release day. It's a testament to the region's winemaking heritage and the world's enduring love for this youthful wine. Have you ever celebrated Beaujolais Nouveau Day? Share your experiences in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more intriguing wine tales. Imagine a world where champagne wasn't crystal clear, but cloudy, a time when only royalty could afford a sip of this golden elixir. But then, one woman changed everything. Against all odds, in an era dominated by men, she defied convention and created the modern champagne industry as we know it today. This is the story of Madame Clicquot, the widow who revolutionized sparkling wine forever. The year is 1777, and in the heart of Champagne, France, a girl named Barbe Nicole Ponsardin is born into a wealthy textile family. At just 12 years old, she witnesses the French Revolution, a period of chaos and change that will later shape her destiny. But despite her privileged upbringing, young Barbe Nicole was not like the other girls of high society. She was ambitious, curious, and above all, fearless. At 21, she marries Francois Clicquot, the son of a successful wine merchant. Together, they dream of turning his family's small champagne house into a global empire. But fate has other plans. Just 6 years into their marriage, tragedy strikes. Francois dies suddenly of fever, leaving Barbe Nicole a widow at 27. In a time when women had no place in business, the world expected her to step aside, but she refused. Instead of selling the company, Madame Clicquot took control, something unheard of in 19th century France. But there was a problem. The champagne industry was struggling. The wines were cloudy, inconsistent, and difficult to transport. She needed an edge, something that would set her apart. Her first move? She perfected the art of clarity. With the help of her cellar master, she invented the riddling table, a revolutionary technique that allowed sediment to settle and be removed, leaving behind the crystal-clear champagne we know today. At the time, this was top-secret knowledge, a game-changing innovation that gave her wines an unmatched elegance. But that wasn't enough. Madame Clicquot wanted more than just clarity. She wanted perfection. She pioneered vintage champagne, selecting the best grapes from a single year rather than blending multiple harvests. This was unheard of, but it elevated the prestige of her wines to a whole new level. But business was tough. Napoleon's wars had brought European trade to a halt, and an embargo prevented French goods from reaching Russia, one of the biggest champagne markets. While other winemakers gave up, Madame Clicquot took a massive risk. In 1814, she orchestrated an illegal shipment of 25,000 bottles of champagne through the blockade, smuggling it into Russia just as Napoleon's defeat was announced. The timing was perfect. The Russian aristocracy was desperate to celebrate, and they fell in love with her champagne. Tsar Alexander I himself declared it his favorite, making Veuve Clicquot the most sought-after champagne in Europe. By the time Madame Clicquot retired, her empire was producing over 750,000 bottles per year, cementing her as the first true businesswoman in the world of wine. She became known as La Grande Dame de Champagne, a title that still defines Veuve Clicquot today. Her legacy lives on, not just in her iconic yellow label, but in the very techniques that every champagne house still uses today. From a young widow in a man's world to a pioneer who reshaped an industry, Madame Clicquot proved that fortune favors the bold. Have you ever tasted a bottle of Veuve Clicquot? What's your favorite champagne? Let us know in the comments below. And if you love wine history, don't forget to subscribe for more legendary stories. Cheers! What if I told you that the purest glass of wine in the world was born out of war, religion, and volcanic stone? Sancerre, a quiet hilltop village in the Loire Valley. But behind its crisp, mineral Sauvignon Blanc lies a story of monks, revolutions, destruction, and an unlikely rebirth. Stay with us until the very end to discover the one geological secret that makes Sancerre unlike any other wine on earth. This isn't just a glass of wine. It's the history of France bottled. Sancerre means sacred hill. Perched on a rocky peak, the village was once a medieval fortress, its cliffs protected by nature, its views stretching for miles. During the Middle Ages, it became a key stronghold during the Hundred Years' War and later the French Wars of Religion. Protestants and Catholics fought bloody battles here, and in 1573, Sancerre endured a siege that lasted 7 months. Locals held out with dried beans and salted goat cheese. But even in the darkest hours, vineyards clung to the hills. Because here, wine was more than survival, it was identity. The true origins of Sancerre's wine fame trace back to the 11th century, when Augustinian monks cultivated vines around the hill. They favored Pinot Noir, a red grape more common at the time. But centuries later, a disaster would change everything. In the late 1800s, the phylloxera plague, a root-eating insect, wiped out most of the vineyards in Sancerre. Pinot Noir was devastated. In desperation, farmers replanted with a more resistant grape. Sauvignon Blanc. They had no idea that this switch would redefine their destiny. By the 20th century, white Sancerre had found its voice. Fresh, zesty, flinty. Its secret? The soil. Beneath the vines lie 3 distinct terroirs. 1. Terres Blanches, clay limestone, producing full-bodied wines. 2. Caillots, pebbly chalk, light and aromatic. 3. Silex, flint-rich soil that gives Sancerre its signature gunflint minerality. And while Parisian cafes fell in love with it, Sancerre's real rise began during the Second World War. As German troops advanced through France, locals hid wine in caves and cellars. Some say the aroma of Sancerre gave away secret tunnels used by the resistance. What makes Sancerre so fascinating is its simplicity and complexity. It's never aged in oak. There's no heavy alcohol, no flashy branding, just precision, freshness, and purity. And yet, no 2 bottles taste the same. Even vineyards just meters apart show different flavors, depending on the soil beneath them. A silex-based Sancerre, smoky, sharp, electric. Caillots, lively and bright. Terres Blanches, rich and textured. It's a wine that demands you pay attention because it refuses to shout. Across the river from Sancerre lies Pouilly-Fumé, another Sauvignon Blanc icon. For decades, wine critics debated which is better. Pouilly-Fumé is denser, sometimes aged on lees, often wrapped in a more noble image. Sancerre, more rustic, straightforward, until it wasn't. In the 1980s and 90s, young winemakers in Sancerre began pushing boundaries. Biodynamic farming, wild fermentations, precise single-parcel bottlings. Suddenly, purity became power. Today, top-tier Sancerre rivals the finest white Burgundies, and in blind tastings, it often wins. Sancerre is no longer a secret. From Tokyo to San Francisco, it's on the list of every sommelier who worships minerality and elegance. But unlike other trendy wines, Sancerre hasn't lost its soul. Most of the vineyards are still family-run. Harvest is still done by hand in many domains. And with climate change, growers are moving to higher, cooler slopes, sometimes uncovering ancient plots last used centuries ago. In 2023, a 14th century vineyard was rediscovered near Chavignol. Planted with Massel selection vines and facing east, it now produces one of the purest expressions of Sancerre on record. So the next time you sip a glass of Sancerre, remember, you're not just drinking Sauvignon Blanc. You're tasting a sacred hill that stood against war and time. You're drinking volcanic flint and medieval soil. You're sipping what monks once offered to kings. You're sharing a story that began over 1,000 years ago. It's not just white wine, it's purity in a glass. Have you ever tried a Sancerre? Which soil type is your favorite? Flinty, chalky, or rich and creamy? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. More untold stories of wine history are just one sip away. What if a glass of wine could whisper centuries of devotion, survival, and rebellion? Chablis isn't just Chardonnay, it's history poured into a glass. A wine that defied wars, fire, frost, and fashion trends. It's the rebel of Burgundy, born in prayer, scarred by fire, and reborn again and again. But why has this pale, flinty wine outlived empires? Stay with us, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why Chablis isn't just a wine, It's a resurrection. Let's rewind to the 12th century. In the Abbey of Pontigny, Cistercian monks planted Chardonnay vines in a place they deemed sacred, not just for its quiet hills, but for its soul. These monks believed that tending vines was an act of divine devotion. They didn't make wine to impress nobles. They made it for the altar. For them, Chablis was a liquid sacrament. And in 1568, that sacred ground was nearly lost. The Huguenots swept through Chablis during the wars of religion, burning the village to the ground. Monasteries, homes, and vineyards turned to ash. But the vines, they came back. Thanks to the faith and grit of the locals, Chablis was replanted. The legacy endured. They say the monks chose this land for its purity. Centuries later, the wine still tastes like prayer. Chablis owes its character not just to history, but to geology. Underneath its vineyards lies a bed of ancient seashells, Kimmeridgian limestone, from a time when the region was part of a prehistoric ocean. The result? A wine that tastes like whetstones, flint, and lightning. The French call it goût de pierre à fusil, the taste of struck flint. But this purity came at a cost. In the 19th century, disaster struck. First powdery mildew, then the dreaded phylloxera, a root-eating louse from America. Vineyards withered. Chablis nearly vanished. The solution? Grafting Chardonnay onto American rootstocks. A compromise that saved the vines but sparked debates that echo even today. Is purity preserved if its roots are foreign? Fast forward to 1948. Enter François Ravenel. A man obsessed with authenticity, he founded a domain that would become the holy grail of Chablis. No flashy labels, no marketing tricks, just wine made like it was meant to be. His secret: tiny yields, indigenous yeasts, no new oak, only patience and terroir. His Grand Cru, Les Clos, Valmour, are whispered about in hushed tones by sommeliers and collectors. Only 1,500 bottles per vintage. And yet his wines last decades, like bottled time capsules. For Ravenel, Chablis wasn't about trends, it was about truth. But not everyone followed the monk's path. Vincent d'Ovissa, another legend of Chablis, took a different road. Yes, he believed in terroir, but he also believed in barrels, something that many in Chablis avoided like heresy. He let his wines ferment in steel, but age in oak, new oak. The result? Wines that were both mineral and muscular, complex, structured, and capable of aging 10, even 20 years. d'Ovissa proved that tradition isn't static, it's a conversation. And Chablis? It had room for rebellion. After World War II, Chablis was in ruins. Its cellars had been looted, its vines neglected, its future uncertain. So in 1949, the village launched a celebration, La Fête des Vins de Chablis. Part wine fair, part resurrection. Producers came together, bottles were shared, old vintages uncorked, and a new tradition was born. Today, the fête welcomes thousands every year, not just to taste wine, but to honor survival. It's here you'll find the Confrérie des Piliers Chablisiens, a brotherhood of winemakers, sommeliers, and lovers of Chablis sworn to protect its legacy. Their motto? Chablis, toujours Chablis. Always Chablis. Let's talk about the wines themselves, especially the Grand Cru, 7 sacred slopes just north of the village. Les Clos, Blanchot, Vaudésire, names whispered by collectors. These wines can age 15, 20, even 30 years. Starting sharp and linear, they evolve into golden elixirs with notes of honey, dried herbs, and river stones. They don't shout, they whisper. They don't entertain, they endure. These aren't just wines for drinking. They're wines for reflecting. Wines that mark time. In a world of speed, Chablis teaches patience. So what makes Chablis different? It's not just the Chardonnay, it's the struggle, the scars, the silence. This is a wine that was born in prayer, tested by war, tempered by frost, and perfected by patience. It has no makeup, no pretense, just clarity. From monks to modern rebels, from fire to fat, Chablis has been reborn again and again, because some wines are made to impress. But Chablis is made to last. What if I told you that some of the finest sparkling wines in France don't come from Champagne? In fact, there's a wine that's made almost the exact same way, with the same grapes and centuries of history, yet costs a fraction of the price. It's called Crémant, and it might be France's best-kept secret. But how did it come to be? Why is it overlooked? And is it really just as good? Stay with us until the end to discover why some sommeliers are calling Crémant Champagne's cooler cousin. Before Champagne became the icon it is today, the French were already experimenting with bubbly wines. In the 16th century, monks in the Loire Valley and Burgundy noticed that their wines would sometimes start fermenting again in the bottle when temperatures rose in spring. The result, natural bubbles. At the time, it was seen as a flaw. But soon, winemakers began to embrace this second fermentation. By the 18th century, Champagne had mastered it. But here's the twist, they weren't alone. In regions across France, from Alsace to Limoux, sparkling wine traditions quietly evolved. And out of that came Crémant. So why don't we just call it Champagne? Because the name Champagne is legally protected. Only sparkling wines made in the Champagne region, under strict rules, can bear the name. After a series of international legal battles in the 20th century, France began tightening these protections. So other regions had to get creative. They couldn't call it Champagne, so they called it Crémant, from the French word for creamy, referring to its smooth bubbles. In 1975, Crémant was officially recognized with its own AOC designation. And suddenly, France had a sparkling revolution on its hands. Crémant isn't just one wine, it's a family. Today, there are 8 official Crémant regions in France. 1. Crémant d'Alsace, floral and elegant, often made with Pinot Blanc and Riesling. 2. Crémant de Bourgogne, the closest to Champagne using Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. 3. Crémant de Loire, crisp, citrusy, made with Chenin Blanc. 4. Crémant de Limoux, from the south of France, some say it's where sparkling wine was invented. 5. Crémant de Bordeaux, rich and fruity. 6. Crémant de Jura, high-altitude freshness. 7. Crémant de Savoie, alpine and rare. And finally, 8. Crémant de Die, ancient, slightly sweet, made with claret grapes. Each region brings its own terroir, traditions, and twist on the méthode traditionnelle. Here's what might surprise you. Crémant is made using the exact same method as Champagne, known as the méthode traditionnelle. Base wine is fermented, then bottled with sugar and yeast for a second fermentation, aged on lees for complexity, riddled, disgorged, and corked. The main difference, location and price. While a good Champagne can cost 40 euros, a top-quality Crémant might be just 15 euros. Why? Less branding, less hype, smaller marketing budgets. But when it comes to technique, Crémant plays in the same league. For years, Crémant was dismissed as cheap Champagne. But in the last 2 decades, that's changed. Top sommeliers now recommend Crémant for food pairings, blind tastings, and even weddings. Some producers, like Domaine de l'Arcadie in Alsace or Clotilde Davin in Burgundy, have elevated Crémant to new heights. Today, Crémant d'Alsace alone accounts for more than 50% of the region's sparkling wine exports. You'll find Crémant in Michelin-starred restaurants and in the cellars of those in the know. So, is Crémant just Champagne without the name? Not quite. It's Champagne's cousin, less flashy, more humble, but just as full of soul. It's a celebration of French diversity, of regional identity, and of the idea that great wine doesn't have to break the bank. So next time you reach for a bottle of bubbles, remember, there's a whole world beyond Champagne. And Crémant might just be the sparkle you've been missing. Let us know in the comments, have you ever tried a Crémant? Which region is your favorite? And don't forget to subscribe for more sparkling wine stories every week. What if a single glass of white wine could tell the story of war, peace, and identity? Alsace Riesling isn't just a wine, it's a declaration. A bottle that speaks both French and German, shaped by centuries of conflict, culture, and resilience. In this story, monks, emperors, and winemakers all played a role in defining one of the world's most misunderstood and yet brilliant white wines. Stay with us until the end, because what you'll discover is how Riesling, in this tiny borderland, became a symbol of unity, and how one grape managed to survive and even thrive through the tug-of-war of two nations. Welcome to Alsace. Nestled between the Vosges Mountains and the Rhine River, it's a land of half-timbered villages and storybook vineyards. But behind this picturesque charm lies centuries of struggle. Since the 1600s, Alsace has changed hands 5 times between France and Germany. Louis XIV, Napoleon, Kaiser Wilhelm, Hitler, de Gaulle, each left a mark not just on the language and culture, but on the wine. Road signs are in French, but locals say Gewürztraminer with a perfect German accent. The wine labels? Often bilingual, and the architecture of the cellars? More Rhine than Rhone. Alsace is French, but also not quite. And Riesling? It became the unofficial ambassador of this dual identity. Long before politics drew borders, the monks drew vineyards. The first vines of Riesling in Alsace are believed to have been planted by Benedictine and Cistercian monks in the 9th and 10th centuries. They cultivated the steep slopes, recorded soil quality, and, believe it or not, invented some of the earliest terroir mapping. Alsace's connection to wine goes even deeper, to the Romans. Ancient amphorae found in Strasbourg and Colmar show that Romans cherished the cool climate whites from this region. But it was Riesling that stuck. Why? Because it could survive. Its high acidity made it ideal for aging. Its resilience allowed it to grow in the varied, often harsh microclimates of the Vosges foothills. And its aromatic complexity, a gift from the region's mosaic of soils. Then came the 19th century. In 1871, after the Franco-Prussian War, Alsace was annexed by the German Empire. Overnight, French citizens became German subjects. The language changed, school books changed, even the wine laws changed. Riesling, already a respected grape, became a symbol of German quality. But when Alsace returned to France after World War I, everything reversed. German was banned. French wine rules reasserted themselves, and yet Riesling remained, not just as a grape, but as a survivor. It adapted to both systems. In Germany, it's often sweet or off-dry. In Alsace, it's bone-dry, mineral, and structured. Two interpretations of the same grape, mirroring the two nations who claimed the region. In 1975, France officially recognized the first Grand Cru vineyards in Alsace, a moment of validation for the region. Today, there are 51 Grand Crus, with Riesling being the dominant grape in many of them. Names like Schlossberg, Brand, and Zotzenberg are whispered with reverence by sommeliers, but not everyone agreed with this classification. Some producers, like the iconic Marcel Diess, rebelled. They felt the Grand Cru model borrowed too much from Burgundy and didn't reflect Alsace's unique blend of geology, climate, and tradition. Others, like Trimbach, refused to label their best Rieslings as Grand Cru, even when the vineyards qualified. Their reasoning? The wine should speak for itself. Not every Riesling bears a title, but in Alsace, the most powerful bottles don't shout, they whisper. One of the biggest misunderstandings about Alsace Riesling is sweetness. Many wine drinkers expect it to be sweet, like its German cousins. But Alsace Riesling is usually dry, elegant, and food-friendly. That said, there's nuance. The region also produces Vendange Tardives, late harvest, and Sélection de Grands Nobles, noble rot selections, some of the most exquisite sweet wines in the world. And then there's the ancient tradition of Gentil, a field blend where Riesling plays a lead, but other grapes like Pinot Gris and Muscat join the chorus. Alsace doesn't follow just one rule. It's structured but flexible, a paradox in a glass. During World War II, Alsace was again under German control. Many winemakers were forced to Germanize their production. Some resisted quietly, hiding French flags under barrels, refusing to follow Nazi directives, or smuggling wine across borders. Riesling became a symbol of quiet rebellion. After the war, rebuilding was slow. But in the vineyards, hope returned. Families replanted, new domains emerged, and Riesling once again became a vessel of identity and resilience. Today, you can still feel that tension in the glass. Beauty built on hardship. Alsace Riesling isn't just wine, it's geopolitical geology. It's the taste of two cultures negotiating a shared future. It's mountain air and river mist. It's French elegance and German precision, dancing in the same bottle. And most of all, it's a reminder that wine can transcend borders, even when people cannot. So next time you raise a glass of Alsace Riesling, remember, you're not just sipping wine. You're drinking a story centuries in the making. The story of two nations, one grape, and a glass full of history. Santé, Prost, cheers. There are bottles of wine so ancient, so heavy with history, that to open them without reverence is to break an enchantment. Chateau Margaux, 1787. A bottle tied to a president's dream. A legend that shattered in a single tragic moment. But was it really an accident? Or was it a silent curse, punishing those who dared disturb its slumber? In the heart of the Medoc, framed by endless vines and early morning mist, stands Chateau Margaux, a name whispered with reverence since the 12th century. By 1855, it had earned its place among the Premier Grand Crus, not just a wine estate, but a cathedral of viticulture, a place where each bottle is a relic, every cork a time capsule, a Versailles of wine, they called it. But Versailles, too, had its ghosts. Thomas Jefferson, the American ambassador to France, fell under Chateau Margaux's spell. He ordered bottles inscribed with his initials, THJ. One survived, 1787, a relic beyond value, a bottle that carried across centuries, surviving wars, revolutions, and oblivion. An artifact of a man who believed wine could build nations. A bottle too old to be merely drunk, it was meant to be honored. New York City, the Four Seasons Hotel, a gathering of collectors, magnates, and dreamers. William Sokolin proudly displayed the Jefferson Margaux, $500,000 in his hands. Then, a slip, a crack, a gasp. The bottle shattered, centuries of history bleeding out onto polished marble. No wine ever tasted, no ceremony, only silence and an echo. Some said it was an accident, others that it was the curse, a punishment for treating sacred relics like trophies. In the ancient chateau, every great bottle demands a ritual. Silence, respect, a slow hand, a whispered blessing. Wine at that level is not simply uncorked, it is awakened. To open such a bottle without ritual is to mock time itself. Chateau Margaux knows this. Perhaps the bottle did too. Some believe a spirit watches over these relics, demanding that the living approach with reverence or risk consequences. Perhaps some bottles are never meant to be open. Perhaps some stories prefer to remain sealed in glass. Chateau Margaux, 1787. A dream shattered, a silent warning whispered across time. Respect what endures, or suffer the echo of what was lost.